I've been a freelance land surveyor for about 15 years, and most of my work happens far away from roads, towns, and people. I spend days at a time in empty places, mapping boundaries that most people will never see and would never care about if they did. I'm usually alone, always have been. That used to be one of the best parts of the job. There's a certain kind of silence you only find in the backcountry. It isn't peaceful the way people imagine. It's heavier than that. Cleaner. Colder. Like the world has stopped speaking and is waiting for you to do the same. Most people would probably hate it. I didn't. I used to think I understood it. I used to think I belonged in places like that. Then, about 4 years ago, I took a winter job near the Clearwater region in Idaho. And something happened out there that changed the way I work forever. The assignment sounded simple on paper. I was hired to verify and log a set of boundary markers on a parcel deep in the mountains. It was remote enough that just reaching the area required a long hike with full gear. By the time I reached the place I planned to camp, I'd already put 6 hard miles behind me. Snow clung to the tree branches. The wind cut through my jacket in sharp little bursts. Every breath came out in white clouds. And by the time I got my tent up, the last of the daylight was already dying behind the ridge. I did everything the right way. I filed my route with the ranger station. I packed enough food and fuel for a week. I checked my weather updates. I marked my path. I wasn't reckless. That's probably why what happened still bothers me so much. I wasn't some idiot who wandered into the woods unprepared. I knew what I was doing. The first day went smoothly. I found 3 markers, recorded their positions, took notes, double-checked the terrain, and made it back to camp before dark. The weather was cold, but manageable. Light snow, nothing more. I cooked dinner on my stove, crawled into my sleeping bag, and slept without a single bad feeling in my chest. The second day was different from the moment I stepped out of the tent. The snow had thickened overnight. The forest looked softer, quieter, but more dangerous. The trail I'd made the day before was half covered. Rocks and roots were hidden under fresh powder. Slopes looked flatter than they were. Ice vanished beneath a clean white layer that made every step feel like a guess. I should have stayed put. I knew that even then. But the next marker was only about a mile away, maybe a little more. And I convinced myself I could get it done and be back before things got worse. That's the kind of decision people make when nothing bad has happened to them yet. You start believing the wilderness is difficult, not cruel. You forget how fast it can change its mind about you. I moved slowly, careful with every step, checking the ground with my boot before putting weight on it. For a while it worked. Then I came to a short embankment, the kind of slope that doesn't look dangerous until you're on it. I eased 1 foot down, then the other, and on the next step, my right boot hit a patch of ice I never saw. The world disappeared under me. 1 second I was upright. The next, I was sliding downhill, out of control, scraping through snow and buried brush, my hands clawing at whatever they could find. I slammed into something hard and stopped with my shoulder against a tree root. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then the pain hit my ankle so hard it made my vision blur. I swore, rolled over, and tried to stand. The second I put weight on my right leg, I almost dropped back into the snow. The pain was immediate and vicious, sharp enough to make me nauseous. I stood there for a few seconds, breathing through my teeth, hoping it was just a flare, a twist that would ease up. It didn't. I knew right then the job was over. No marker was worth getting stranded in those conditions with a bad ankle. I turned around and started the slow, miserable hike back toward camp, trying to keep my weight on my left side, using trees and uneven drifts for balance. The snow kept falling, not hard enough to blind me, but enough to erase detail, enough to flatten sound. A few minutes into the walk back, I noticed footprints on the trail ahead of me. Fresh ones. They looked like boot prints, not animal tracks. They came in from somewhere off to the left side of the trail, and then continued in the same direction I was going. The edges were still crisp despite the snowfall, which meant whoever had made them couldn't be far ahead. At first, I wasn't concerned. People show up in remote places all the time for reasons that don't make sense until you learn the area. Hunters, hikers, property workers. Somebody checking a line or trying their luck in the woods. I remember actually feeling a little relieved at first. Another person nearby meant I wasn't completely alone with a bad ankle. I kept moving. The light was fading faster than I liked, and after a while I began hearing sounds behind me. At first, it was so faint I barely registered it. Just little compressions in the snow. A soft rhythm. Enough to make me turn my head. When I looked back, there was nothing there but trees and drifting white. I told myself it was the forest settling, snow dropping from branches. My own steps echoing strangely through the timber. But the sound kept returning. And the more I listened, the more it sounded exactly like footsteps. That was when I stopped. I froze in the middle of the trail and waited. The sound continued for one more second, then another. Then it stopped too. I still remember how that felt. Not panic. Not yet. Something colder than panic. A precise kind of fear. Because if the sound had stopped the instant I did, I could have convinced myself it was my imagination. But that delay made it feel intentional. Like something had been moving behind me and needed that extra second to decide to go still. I listened. Nothing. Only wind. Snow. My own breathing. So I started walking again. For a minute or two, there was no sound at all, and I felt stupid for being nervous. Then the footsteps returned. Not ahead. Not beside me. Behind me. Slow. Careful. Measured. I kept turning around, scanning the trunks, the spaces between them, the dark patches where the forest thickened. I couldn't see anyone. That part of the woods was dense enough to hide a truck if you parked it deep enough, so a person staying out of sight wouldn't be hard to imagine. But imagination is one thing. Hearing movement and seeing nothing is another. My ankle throbbed with every step, and that made it worse. If it had been an animal, I couldn't outrun it. If it had been a man, I couldn't fight or flee with any confidence. I hated that feeling more than anything. Being reduced. Knowing your body won't save you if something comes out of the trees. Then I heard something metallic off to my left. It was faint. Just a little clink. Like a piece of metal lightly striking a post or tool. It was the wrong sound for that place. Wrong enough that it made me stop thinking about the footsteps for a second. There shouldn't have been anything metal out there. No fence. No equipment. No structure. I turned my head toward the sound, trying to look through the trees. And when I looked back down at the trail, the footprints ahead of me were gone. I stopped cold. I stared at the snow in front of me, trying to understand what I was seeing. Those prints had been there seconds ago, cutting ahead into the white. Now there was nothing. No clear turn, no obvious branch off, no explanation. Then I saw them again, to my left. A second line of footprints moving through the trees, running almost parallel to me. Not far away either. close enough that I could tell whoever made them was matching my pace. I can still feel the exact moment my fear changed shape. Up until then, I'd been trying to explain things. After that, I stopped trying. Whoever had made those original tracks hadn't disappeared. He had left the trail and moved into the woods to walk beside me without being seen. I should have kept my mouth shut. I know that now. Instead, I called out, "Hello, is somebody there?" The words sounded weak the second they left my mouth. They drifted into the trees and vanished. No answer came back. No voice, no movement. Just the snow in the dark. I waited longer than I should have, maybe 20 seconds. And then I started moving again. Faster, even though it hurt. Camp couldn't have been much farther. I kept telling myself that if I could just reach the tent, get my gear together, and start back out, I'd be fine. That's when I heard a branch snap behind me. Not a soft crack, a heavy one. Loud enough that there was no mistaking it for natural settling. Something had stepped wrong. Or stepped deliberately. I didn't look back. Every instinct in me wanted to, but I didn't. I kept moving, breathing hard now, half limping, half falling forward through the snow. The forest around me had that evening look where everything flattens into blue and black. Trees started becoming shapes instead of details. Distance became impossible to judge. Then, finally, I saw the vague outline of my campsite. I could have cried with relief. I got into the tent, zipped it shut, and for a second, I just knelt there, breathing hard, telling myself I'd made it. But the second that thought formed, another followed it. Made it where? Into a nylon shelter in the middle of nowhere. If someone had followed me back, that tent wasn't protection. It was a lantern, a marker, a bright little announcement that I was inside and vulnerable. So I started packing immediately, hands shaking, ankle screaming, gear going into the bag in the wrong order because I didn't care anymore. I wasn't spending another minute there than I had to. Then I heard the sound I'd been dreading since the trail. Footsteps, right outside the tent. Not rushing, not charging, circling. They moved around me with slow, controlled patience. One side, then the other. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. Like whoever was out there had all the time in the world. Like he was trying to imagine where exactly I was kneeling inside. What I might do. Whether I was worth the trouble. I sat there frozen, one hand on the zipper. Every muscle in my body locked tight. My own breathing sounded too loud. I felt like if I exhaled too hard, the person outside would hear my fear and smile. The circling went on for what felt like forever. It might have been 2 minutes. It might have been 5. Time changes in moments like that. It stretches until each second feels long enough to hold a thought and a prayer, and a goodbye. Then it stopped. No retreating footsteps. No crunch fading into the distance. Just silence. That was somehow worse. I knew I had one chance. If the person outside was waiting for me to panic, staying there would only trap me. So I finished stuffing the last of my gear into the pack, took one deep breath, and yanked the tent open. The cold hit me first, then the trees, then him. He was standing at the tree line, not hidden, not moving, just looking at me. He was old, older than I first understood, and his body looked wrong somehow, too thin under heavy clothes, like a scarecrow wrapped in winter gear. His face was pale to the point of looking sick. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes were dark and set deep. And even at that distance there was something rotten in the way he stared. Not rage, not confusion. Just a calm, dead kind of interest. threw my hands up and said the only thing I could think of. I don't want any trouble. He didn't answer, didn't move, didn't blink, as far as I could tell. We just stood there staring at each other while the snow drifted between us. I kept waiting for him to rush me. I kept waiting for him to pull something from his coat or start walking forward. Instead, he stayed perfectly still, almost as if he were deciding whether I mattered. Then, after what felt like far too long, he finally spoke. "You're a lucky man." His voice was low and rough, like I hadn't used it in years. And then he turned and disappeared into the woods. Just like that. No explanation. No threat. No second look. I packed the rest in a blur and left that night, injured ankle or not. I didn't care that it was dark. I didn't care that hiking out in those conditions was dangerous. The only thing I cared about was getting farther away from that tent, that trail, and that man. Later, I found out I'd severely sprained my ankle, and was lucky I hadn't done worse damage by walking on it. I reported the encounter, of course, but I knew while I was doing it that nothing would come of it. How do you explain a man in the woods who says one sentence and vanishes? How do you prove someone circled your tent and then chose not to kill you? I still do remote work. It's my livelihood, and I'm good at it. But I don't camp alone on winter assignments anymore. I either take someone with me, or I turn the job down. Because if that man had wanted to hurt me, there was nothing between me and him except snow, darkness, and luck. And sometimes, I still hear that sentence in my head, clear as if he were standing right behind me. "You're a lucky man." I've spent years trying to decide what he meant. That I was lucky he'd found me, lucky he'd spared me, or lucky that whatever he had planned for me changed at the last second. I don't know. And that's the part that still keeps me awake.